welcome to episode 336 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Jesse Alva,
Ash Baker,
and Jessica Carr.
And in today's episode, we'll be talking about movies that we saw this week in part 1, and in part 2, we'll be continuing our Mads Mikkelsen series with 2012's A Royal Affair. And it's going to get steamy. And it's going to get...
I guess it's going to get steamy.
It's going to get spicy.
It's going to get so steamy.
It's going to get crazy. Anyway, real quickly, head over to cinematary.com. We got a new review of La Casa by Reed Ramsey, and then we also have some new reviews of Promising Young Woman by Paige Taylor, and Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter by Joseph Bullock. So head over to the website. We'll have a new review of The Wanting Mayor as well on there next week. So there you go. Let's go ahead, though, and jump into movies that we saw this week. And Jessica, I'm going to start it with you because you saw a new release.
All right. So I saw a little low-budget indie film called Save Yourselves. And it's directed by Eleanor Wilson and Alex Huston Fisher. And the reason why I rented this movie on Amazon for like 99 cents, and I had been eyeing it since like November, December of last year, but I was like, movies have been so hit or miss last year that I was kind of worried that I would pay like $7 to rent it and that it was going to be bad. And so I kind of was just like, well, since it's only 99 cents, like I'm going to go ahead and try it. And I'm really glad that I did because I ended up liking it a lot. The film stars John Reynolds, who you might know as the like tall, lanky, like cop with glasses in Stranger Things. And then also Sunita Mani is the other actor in the movie, and it stars like them as a couple, and they're from Brooklyn, and they're like grinding and doing their everyday jobs, but they're like cannot disconnect from their phone or from their computers. They're having a hard time because they're like can't disconnect from technology, and so they decide like, okay, we're gonna go camping, we're gonna go to this cabin, and we're not gonna turn our phones on. We're gonna turn our phones off. We're not gonna talk to anybody. We're just gonna stay there for a week and try to just like relax and to like find ourselves. And while they do this like retreat, there are aliens that take over the world and they're like these like they literally look like puffballs, and they have these like tongues that come out and they like strike people in the brain and just kill them. And it's very cool the way that these like aliens like kill people, but it also turns out that the aliens like suck in ethanol, and that's what like feeds them. So the aliens are going around and like drinking the gas out of people's like cars, and so like people can't get around, and the aliens are just killing them. And this couple is like doesn't know what's going on, and Sue, the like lead actress, like she decides she can't take it anymore, and she's like, I need to turn my phone on. Like I feel this urge to like look up stuff, like to Google things. And she turns her phone on, and there's like a voicemail from her mom who's like, there are these like rats that are taking over the world, and she doesn't know like what's going on. And so she like confesses to her partner that like I turned my phone on and like some weird stuff is happening, and then one of the aliens like shows up there, and so then the whole rest of the movie is just turns into like a survival movie. But like one of the main themes in the movie that I thought was really cool is that it definitely was saying something about like, yes, you know, millennials are tied to their phones. Like we're always on our phone, we're always on our computers, but it wasn't saying like technology bad, which I feel like a lot of movies like nowadays when they're talking about the way that technology influences us, it's always negative, like it's always bad. And which is why you have shows like Black Mirror, because it's just like always saying that this thing that we're all connected to is actually awful. But what I like about this movie is that it is saying that technology isn't all bad, because like as millennials we have had tons of information at our disposal for years. Like all of these things that we're Googling and all this information, that we're actually absorbing it, like we're using it. And it was interesting because in the movie, like the guy learned how to make bread because he was making a sourdough starter, and so they didn't starve because he knew how to make bread, which like tons of millennials did during the pandemic. They were like, okay, I'm gonna be like a pioneer now, and I'm gonna like make my own bread and learn how to do it. But it's still a skill that you learned from technology. And then Sue, the main character, she also like remembers learning how to drive stick shift, and the only car that is available to them is a diesel truck because the aliens are like sucking all of the like gas with ethanol in it. And so she's able to drive the truck and get them to the places they need to go so they can escape. So it's just like all of these things, like technology is still a resource to us, and it's not just bad, and it can actually aid in our survival. Like I feel like boomers always make these jokes that like if there was an apocalypse, like millennials wouldn't survive because we don't have any skill set, all we do is sit on our phone. But like I think that this movie is saying like we're actually absorbing things and we're learning from the technology that we have. So yeah, go check it out. It's only 99 cents 100%. On Amazon. It is
because I saw you tweet like on Twitter going, you guys should watch this. It's 99 cents. I was like, oh yeah, I should check it out. And then I went to Hulu and I was like, oh hey, here it is.
Are you serious? No. Are you serious? Are you serious?
Oh.
I have Hulu. I'm so aggravated. That is whatever. I gave them $1. It was worth it. I hope they make more movies. So
there you go. All right. So speaking of Hulu, because I watched this on Hulu when I decided not to watch Save Yourselves, but it's on the list now.
Bezos
it's
will
on the
love
list
that
now.
$1.
Now I know. This one from 1998 is The Truman Show, which kind of a popular movie. It's pretty well known. People know The Truman Show. It dozens of them.
It's in like rap songs.
It's in rap songs. So that means they've made it. But it stars Jim Carrey, who is a man named Truman Brubank who lives in this manicured like it's almost like it's a bubble around the world, but they've like created this world for him to live in, and he's the star of this 24-hour-a-day TV show called The Truman Show, where there's cameras all over the place, and it's like documenting his life, but he has no idea. And so he has a wife played by Laura Linney, and he has a best friend played by Noah Emmerich, and he has a job where he's like selling insurance. It's a very like nuclear family, Reagan era American household type situation. And while all this is happening, you have people like Paul Giamatti and Ed Harris behind the cameras kind of operating this television show. In a lot of the movie, you have them going into like the control room, but then also like going around the world where people from all over have been like interacting with this television show for his entire life. I'd seen parts of this movie. This was probably the first time that I sat and watched like through The Truman Show all in like one swoop. It kind of, I feel like if I saw this when it came out in 1998, it would have been pretty like galaxy brain. It loses a little edge just because of like reality television and stuff. I feel like, to the point of the movie, there's a lot of folks who are living like a Truman Show-esque existence. It's probably not to the extent of the Truman Show where they've like walled off a whole space of the world to like have this guy's fantasy, or not his fantasy, but like just torture this guy in this hell space. But for the most part, it kind of I feel like it kind of loses its edge just because we have like this 24/7 media cycle that's constantly going, especially just like focused on specific people. It also got me thinking about this trend that's on TikTok where it's called the main character trend, and the whole conceit of it is like kind of coming of age movie and like being self-obsessed, like trends or tropes from movies or television shows or something, and it's kind of playing off this idea that you're the main character of the story and everybody's like paying attention to you. But I was thinking of that while watching the Truman Show, because like a lot of the comedy, a lot of the like entertainment value of the movie is, you know, you constantly have these people who are one, like part of this television show, not, you know, people in this town, but also, you know, there is kind of like this main character mentality to Truman, the Truman Burbank character. He just kind of, he relates with people and acts throughout the entire movie. Like they're constantly feeding him like this "you're the center of attention" mentality. That's kind of entertaining, like to the point that whenever anything kind of goes a little bit awry and they want to like get the path going once again for him, they'll send over his best friend, who's played by Noah Emmerich, with like a 6-pack of beers. And so like it'll be like 11:30 at night, he'll bust in the door and be like, "Hey Truman, want to get a brew?" But even though it kind of loses its punch from just being aged in terms of this, like where we're at in terms of media at the moment. See, there goes Craig. I still think that it has like an edge to it. Like I think that the central conceit where you have this person who's being constantly watched and observed, and like people are interacting with his persona outside of his, like outside of what he knows or comprehends, kind of outside of his consciousness, is very interesting. You know, I think on that level I related to it, just because you look at, you can look at it like people on social media, but then also like people on more visual platforms like YouTube and Twitch and TikTok and things like that, where they're more engaging with people. You know, it's not the Truman Show where he doesn't know, like they're willingly knowing that they're kind of engaging in like this whole thing, but at the same time, like there's kind of this performance, this like facade that you kind of put on, like even though you're trying to be yourself or what have you, like there's still kind of this character that you're putting on, if you're, you know, a YouTube personality or something like that. So it was pretty interesting. I think that it still has a lot of value, and Jim Carrey really gives a great performance in this movie. So I'd recommend Truman Show. I think it's on Hulu and Amazon Prime right now. Yeah, it's worth and it's a good ending too. It's an interesting movie. My other movie I want to talk about, which is just a strange movie. I don't really know what to do with this one. So this one comes from Masaki Yuasa, who did Night is Short, Walk Hard. What is it? Walk Long or Hard? Walk On.
Walk On, girl.
Walk On, girl. Yeah.
Walk on. What?
Walk hard.
On, girl. Oh my god.
I don't know. Maybe she's walking with purpose.
Walk hard, girl.
Walk Hard, girl
Yeah,
edition.
it's like, I don't know. # girl boss feminism. I don't know. What are you gonna do? So this one, though, I think is his latest movie that he's done. It's from 2019. It's called Ride Your Wave. Now, Ride Your Wave, I really don't have much of a review for this. I'm just going to walk through the plot beats of Ride Your Wave, because it's an anime, so I feel like you should know what you're getting into. I decided after watching this, I'm kind of hit or miss on animes, like, or I'm just like a basic bitch with animes, because I'm just like, give me some Ghibli, give me some, like, you know, Satoshi Kon, like, I don't, but I'm not gonna like really get deep in the weeds on it, because like this one, so this story, you got this chick. Her name's Hanako. She comes back to where she grew up in a small seaside town. She loves surfing. Then, as it does, you have a fire that breaks out at her apartment, and she almost dies. But this handsome firefighter saves her, and so then they fall in love. Yeah, so she's like, hell yeah, I'm gonna jump on that. Not a wave this time. Yeah, it's not gonna be a wave. She ain't riding your wave. She's riding yo. Anyway. Yeah, we just lost all our listeners. So she falls in love with him.
Ride something.
They're like, together forever, blah, blah, blah. Well, long story short, he dies.
What?
He's
No.
No.
And not only does he die, this dude dies in the water. So, like, trauma. Because she likes surfing, she likes the water, and then he just dies in the water. So she's super distraught.
So now every time she like washes her hands, she's like,
You joke, but hold on. So this guy dies. He was fine, whatever. So she's really distraught. She's sad, and then she starts singing the song that they used to sing together. And lo and behold, while she's at the little restaurant, in her water, it starts to swirl around, and his face pops up. She's like, Minato, are you in the water? And he's like, yes, it's me, your boyfriend. I'm in the water. I have this power where if you sing this song, I'll appear in the water. So then this just starts this whole string of events where like she has like a water bottle and she's like walking around town like talking to the water bottle, and then she's let's take it up. I know, let's take it up a notch. Then she buys this giant
bathtub shape of water.
No, it's pretty much, because she buys this giant like whale blow up doll thing, fills it with water, and then carries the whale blow up everywhere with like her ghost boyfriend in it. It's honestly, honey, like. So then,
hell yeah.
So then, naturally, like, she has to come to terms with, I need to, like, deal with this in a more adult, proper fashion instead of carrying around a whale doll everywhere. And they save a building from burning down because there's, like, these crazy pyromaniac fireworks people. And she learns that the greatest love of all is her love of the sea and riding waves.
So can he appear in any body of water? Like,
pretty much, yeah. Like they're just like at one point. I swear to God, this is real. I swear. She like summons him into a toilet, and she talks to him in the toilet.
Stop. And she pissed on him.
she's like Minato.
Okay, all right. Let's not get into that.
She's like, well, good talk. Okay. I do need to use the bathroom though, so
she just flushes him down.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of Lou Over the Wall. The premise of it.
Isn't that the same guy or is it different?
Yeah. It was also Yuasa. But in Lou Over the Wall, it seems like the biggest difference is the water entity was not a boyfriend, and in this it is. Other than that, I don't really see a huge difference in it.
It's fine. It just, when she was carrying around the whale doll thing, I was like, honey.
So, did you like Night is Short, Walk On Girl?
I like that one a lot. I'm gonna rewatch it. It's on. They put a bunch of his movies on HBO Max, so I'm gonna rewatch it. But this one was just.
Did you think that it was like similar to his style, like in any way? Like, could you tell that it was one of his like films?
It had a couple. Well, with that one is very like, it like breaks into like these really kind of spastic, like weird, interesting. It has like these moments where it just kind of breaks into like, it almost like goes into like a different dimension, and that's super fun. This one is less like that. It has a couple moments like when they're like surfing and stuff. There's some moments, and then when she's talking to her water boyfriend who's jumping out of the water and shit. I guess that's kind of magical, but it's pretty boring in terms. I mean, boring in terms of animation. I mean, there's like crazy stuff happening, but it didn't have like the visual style of Night is Long or whatever.
Is it Night is Short?
Night is Short, Walk On Girl. It's so good, Zach.
Night is
Get it right.
short. Walk that way. Walk this way. Night is short. Walk this way. Da 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 da.
Yeah, I heard mixed reviews about this one, so I didn't watch it because I was afraid that it would make me think less of him, and so I didn't do it.
We actually rented it and like paid money to rent it, and then every day we would get around and think, ooh, do we want to watch it today? And I'd be like, not today, and then we ran out of time. So we never watched it.
Well, let me tell you, you missed out because, I mean, there's a scene where a girl's talking to the toilet, and then like her coworker walks in. She's like, "They think I'm weird." And I'm like, "Yeah, girl, you're talking to a toilet. You're weird as fuck. What are you talking about?"
Okay, freak.
So, Ride Your Wave. It's on HBO Max, and I mean, it's a time, man. If you're into that stuff, it's a time. It's all right. It's not a difficult watch. Most of the time, I was just going, "Girl, what are you doing?" Like that was my whole experience. So, yeah, it's a fun time. All right, we're gonna go ahead and take a break, and then we'll jump into a royal affair after this.
Hello, Cinematary listeners. This is your favorite Filipino podcaster, Jessica Carr. I'm here to let you know about a couple of things that Cinematary offers that you might not know about. First, if you're a fan of what Cinematary is doing, please consider joining us on Patreon. Remember when we weren't clamoring for your dollars? Well, now we're just clamoring for 5 of your dollars. So please help us and donate to our Patreon, and then you'll get exclusive content from our staff, including our Film Theory and Chill series, where a panel takes a piece of theory each month and deconstructs it before diving into whatever topic is on their mind from the past week. The $5 each month is investment in the website and the podcast, and it goes solely to paying our writers for the reviews each week, so please consider doing it. It's only $5. If you missed an episode of Cinematary or a piece of writing we've had, you should consider signing up for our free newsletter. Each Sunday, we send out a note with the latest podcast episode, piece of Patreon content, and the last 2 reviews that we've written at cinematary.com. It's perfect for those of you who are interested in what's happening, and it makes sure that you don't miss a single Cinematary review. Finally, the easiest thing that you can do to help us is to please give us a rating and review on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever else you're using to listen to the show. This helps us get more eyeballs and ears on the podcast and the website, and it helps the people know about Cinematary, which is really what we're here for. So to recap, consider donating to our Patreon, sign up for the free newsletter, and give us a rating or review. We would really appreciate if you could do these things. Thank you for listening, and now back to the show.
And we are back with part 2 of episode 336 of Cinematary. In this part, we'll continue our Mads Mikkelsen's the series with 2012's A Royal Affair. Directed by Nicolaj Arcel, from a script by Arcel and Rasmus Heistenberg. The film stars Alicia Vikander, Mads Mikkelsen, and Mikael Fosgaard. Caroline Matilda, the youngest sister of George III, which as Americans we say, fuck that guy, is betrothed to her cousin Christian, the 7th King of Denmark. Almost immediately aware of her young husband's mental illness, she falls under the charismatic spell of Christian's new doctor. Spoiler alert, it's Mads Mikkelsen. Nicolaj Arcel and Rasmus Heistenberg, it's daddy. And Rasmus Heisterberg started the writing process by reading the 1999 novel The Visit of the Royal Physician, which is based on the events surrounding Johann Friedrich Strauss's time at the Danish court. The exclusive film rights for the novel were sold to another company who had struggled for over a decade to make a large-scale adaptation in English. Research continued in the film was eventually credited as based on Bodil Steensen-Leith's erotic novel Princess af Blodet, which tells the story from the perspective of the Queen. The film's perspective and characterization did still remained highly influenced by the original story, in particular in the portrayal of the Doctor as an idealistic promoter of freedom of speech, the romantic view of the royal court as an ironical charade, and the role of the Queen as a revolutionary partner in crime to the physician. To avoid conflicts about rights, the author was contacted to clarify some instances of what he had made up and was based on documented events, and a person was employed specifically to compare the screenplay and the novel to guarantee that they were dissimilar enough, which seems crazy. On the story, Arcel told Collider that, quote, "It's a very well-known story in Denmark. It's one of the great true stories that everybody knows about, but it hadn't been made into a film." He continued in reference to the film's ending that, quote, "The real story behind it is that they cheat Christian. He wanted to pardon Johann, but the power that be obviously did not want him to, so they neglected or forgot to tell him when the execution was happening. When that happened, he went into a long period of apathy and didn't really know what to do. There's a very sweet, very childish drawing that the king did that you can find in the National Archives. It's a drawing of him and Johann together, like matchstick drawings, and then he has written their names and says, 'I didn't want this to happen.' It's quite moving." In the 2012, the Washington Post said, "Even appreciated simply as a little-known chapter of European history, it proves consistently engrossing, edifying, and affecting." And the New York Times said, "Though A Royal Affair is programmatically committed to modernity, to the banishment of superstition and religious authority, to the rule of law and the supremacy of reason, it is in almost every way a decidedly old-fashioned film. This is not necessarily a bad thing. Stately, stagey expositions of history have their place in the world of entertainment, and the acting is both solid and agile, communicating the feelings of passionate people in a passionate time. But the movie also succumbs to many of the vices of the period film: didacticism, excessive length, and the tendency to read history as a set of moral diagrams." On that note, let's dig a little bit into A Royal Affair. I kind of disagree with that New York Times review. I think that it's very much like a bunch of, in terms of like period piece, it kind of has the beats that you're familiar with. But I also feel like it kind of goes in its own direction, and it has it's dealing with a little bit more interesting stuff like the Enlightenment era philosophies, and kind of like this interjecting of like kind of more free-thinking politics into a world dominated by religion, which I don't think any of us are familiar with. That seems like a strange foreign concept. But I thought it was really handled very, very well. I enjoyed it. What did you all make of A Royal Affair? Actually, let's go to Ash as the mass expert. Why don't you kick us off?
I really like this movie. I think for the reasons that you just mentioned, I like a lot of period pieces all sort of feel the same in a way, because it's either, like a literary classic, or it's a historical drama that's based on a true story that, if it's coming from the US or Britain, it's a pretty familiar story. And even, I would say, for other parts of Europe, even besides Britain, there's, the French Revolution and things that, are in world history classes that a lot of us know about, or at least know the general structure of. But the history of Denmark, I feel like, even though it's right there next to France and Germany, and right there under, the British Isles or whatever, like, I know nothing about Denmark's history. And so watching this felt like, for the first time, sort of felt like watching, I guess, a fictional period piece of a little, like, just something I'd never read or something like that, except for it's just actually another country's history that is just a corner of the world that I've never really learned anything about. And it's super saucy, and I love that. In the Enlightenment period, but that's okay. Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, the Enlightenment period is a time that, like, I'm familiar with from the side of, like, Voltaire and Rousseau and, like, those philosophers and writers coming from France, or the like, liberated, from the point of view of this movie's uh, side of Europe at that time. And so it was interesting also to see from this perspective, see the Enlightenment period from this perspective as well, and get some romance in there too.
It's saucy, but I gotta say, it could have been saucier. I mean, I could have handled just a little bit more, But
well, Jesse, what did you make of the movie?
I liked it overall. I definitely couldn't help but draw a lot of similarities to the new Hulu series The Great, with Elle Fanning as Catherine the Great, the Queen of Russia. It's a really similar kind of setup where it's like this like super young woman gets married to this like total psycho king, and she very quickly realizes, okay, first of all, I hate his guts. Second of all, I do not want to fuck this guy. Third of all, I'm way smarter than him, and like I could make such a better leader. So a lot of that I couldn't help but kind of see. Who, Alicia Vikander? Or the Great?
No, Catherine the Great.
Yeah, she's awesome, and
it's in her name.
So was this too. I mean, I think that that they both are really obviously good historical figures. I wish that she could have lived longer, like Catherine the Great did, but unfortunately, the ending shows us that we don't get that. She didn't get that happy ending. Jessica, what did you think?
So I thought that it was okay, and I'm gonna say some stuff that people are not gonna like, so just everybody prepare for that. I didn't really think that the two leads, like, I didn't really think they had chemistry together. Like, it was very weird, because I thought that the movie was trying to do two things. I thought that it was trying to be like a period romance, but it was also trying to be like a political like thriller type of thing, and it was like threading those things very weirdly to me, where I was kind of getting whiplash because I was like, whenever you spend more time with the king and Johann than you do with the king and then Caroline, whatever. Like, you spend more time.
Can we talk about how weird it is, like, to have just a Queen Caroline? I don't know. To me, I was like, her name's Caroline? Like, somewhere in the movie, they actually say her name for the first time without I even noticed. And I was like, Caroline, what?
And that was the thing, is that they weren't, like, they said her name, like, 3/4 into the movie, and I was like, I didn't even know that was her name. I thought he gave her a nickname, because I didn't even know, like, what her name was. But, like, you spend...
Well, he calls her mother half
I know, that is so nasty. Like, you spend...
Well, it was Mads that called her Caroline. She got upset about something, and he was like, oh, no, Caroline. And I was like,
you spend so much time with the king and with Johann, and I think that... And I thought that was good. Like, I thought their relationship was interesting because of, like, how, like, mentally ill and also spoiled the king was, and how Mads' character was, like, obviously, like, a caring person, but he was also very strategic about his position. And my positives are that I think that every actor in the movie, like, put their 100% into their performance. Like, the performances were extremely captivating, and that carried me through the, like, 2 hour and, like, 20-minute movie. Like, that was, like, the only thing that was keeping me going. And, like, so that was a positive. The other thing was, like, the ending, when everything kind of, like, comes up to a crescendo, and, like, the part where Johann is being executed, and that is, like, very, very compelling. It is, like, a gut punch to the audience, because they don't know that that's coming. And it is almost like you are the king who is also finding out that, like, his friend is being executed. And also when she finds out that he's executed, her performance is, like, very compelling.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It is, like, a punch to...
Her scream is just...
Yeah.
Yes.
And so those are my positives. My negative is that, again, like, I think that it's trying to thread too many lines, and also there is so much, like, fat that you could cut out of that movie. Like, whenever all these people are conspiring, like, whenever the stepmother is, like, talking to all these people, and that freaky little bald man that was, like, trying to, like, get them... I didn't need all of that. That was, like, I think that as an audience member, you can see her plotting, and then you can connect the dots, but there was, like, so many scenes that I was like, y'all could have made this movie, like, 1 hour and 45 minutes. Like, there's no reason that it should have been that long. Like...
I definitely got a little lost in, like, the weird henchmen people. Like, they all kind of looked the same to me, and they were all sort of, either they wanted to do nothing, like, that was kind of we just don't want to really do anything, or they were like, yeah, sure, we'll fuck over the king, we don't care, like, that sounds cool. But it was kind of hard to really distinguish who all those characters were, so they probably could have cut some of those down, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know this for sure, but I guess my thinking is, like, maybe those people became or were, like, significant people in Danish history, and, like, we just don't know who the fuck they are. That's my sort of, like, thought, but I don't know that for sure. I might just be making that up, but I do agree.
Well, I would say, like, in terms of, like, cutting the fat also, I would say the bigger cut would be, because it kicks off, like, it tries to establish their relationship a little bit and kind of show, like, how erratic his behavior is. And I feel like you probably could have just started the movie when Mads shows up. As you can with any movie.
It takes a while for him to show up with the whole, like, oh, we've got an interview and this and that. They're like, okay, the king needs a doctor, so who are we going to pick? And, yeah, we could have...
Yeah, literally just start the movie when he shows up. That's all we need. Oh, but that moment, because you're anticipating the whole time, but that moment, he's, like, got his back turned, and then he turns around and he says, you want me to leave this bleeding patient here? And you're like, yes.
I thought like all three of their dynamics like together were really good. I actually really liked Mads and Alicia together. Like it's like a breath of fresh air for her, and I feel like she does a really good job just like really showing us how like she's just been here what feels like for years and years, just like so alone, just like moping around the castle with like nobody to talk to and nothing to do with herself. And then he shows up and she's actually got a friend. And then when they realize like they're kind of stealing a lot of like glances from across the room, like they're buddies, you know, but they're starting to this romance, this tension is building between them, and and I don't know, it's just so wonderful like when they finally do have sex, because it's like she finally gets to experience like a joyful experience of having sex, and she's so like, this is what it should feel like she's so excited and you're so happy for her, like, yes girl, get it. And I think that they really have a wonderful dynamic. But then like Jessica said too, the king Christian and Johan have a really great relationship too. Like you're kind of really, even though the king is such a dick, like you're actually kind of rooting for him to feel better, and the king or Johan manages to bring kind of a decent side out of him, and so I think that those three actors really have such a good dynamic working together. And that was probably the most compelling part of the movie, was just kind of seeing how that builds up, and then seeing the heartbreak at the end when Johan is executed. I feel like I felt most bad. I mean, obviously I feel sad for the way the romance ends, but that had been kind of gone for a while. But you feel so bad for for Christian, because he's like, this is the one person who kind of anchored him just a little bit, and he has like nothing and nobody, and there's that scene where he's sitting in the chair, and he's just so dejected, and they're like, yeah, we forgot to mention we killed him or whatever, and he's just like, he looks so pale and so hollow in that moment. I think that actor did such a good job.
I did not feel sorry for him at all. Fuck that guy. Like, fuck that guy.
I mean, he sucks. Yeah, he sucks, but like, also he does have like mental illness, and I think that it was just so nice to see Johan able to just kind of get on his level a little bit, even though he was still kind of manipulating him. I think that there was a level of genuineness with it too, and it was really nice to see.
He was definitely manipulating him.
Yeah, but not at the beginning. I feel like, I mean, the beginning kind of was, because he was like, okay, I got this cool gig and I can kind of get my friends in here, so that's cool. But I don't know, I still felt like there was a level of genuineness to it too. Like when he was about to get, I don't know, when he was like about to lose his job, and then Christian stands up for him and he's like, no, fuck all of y'all, this is my friend, actually all of you are fired, me and him run this bitch now. And everyone, Johan's just looking around like, can he do that? And then, yes, he can do that. I don't know, the whole thing too, like the whole court dynamic was pretty interesting to me, especially when you kind of think of the parallels of like our own really fun political experiences here in present day America, and like how, you know, we have these, what do they call it, checks and balances. The checks and balances that we have in place, where we have like some guy in charge, whoever it is at the time, but then we have like this cluster of dudes who are just like, no, we don't want to do that, and then we just don't get anything done for years and years and years. Felt a little too relevant sometimes.
I want to go back to, you know, you were describing kind of the performance that Mads gives, and like how there is kind of like this, at least in what you were describing, like the sympathy for the king. I feel like that kind of goes back to something that we've talked about in this series, where just him as like a performer, he like, I think it was the case also last week, where there is just kind of this empathy in like this, you're drawn to whatever character Mads is playing, and like he kind of has the sensitivity that even when you're like, you have this like horrible, terrible person who he's having to deal with, like there is that level of you can kind of see that he's connecting in a way, and like you feel sympathy for him just based off of the performance that
he's really good at wrangling people, like whether it's like a little kindergartner who's just like leaping on him, or this like kooky king who like doesn't know right from left. He's so good at bringing like this peaceful presence to any character, which is weird because like my biggest context from him is seeing him in Hannibal, and he is not that at all in Hannibal. So all the movies we've watched for the series, he's just so soft and sweet. I didn't watch Punisher, or what is the movie? Punisher 2? Pusher 2, so he's probably not that in
Punisher.
He's probably not that in Pusher 2,
He's in Punisher, the movie.
It is the royal affair, so I mean, Ash, where does this stand in terms of sauciness? Because there's some saucy scenes, but they've said that there could be some saucier scenes.
I think that, like Jesse was saying, for me, like, this is not the sauciest of Matt's movies, but for me, like, it's one of the most satisfying because, like, it gives this like romance story that is just I think it is really believable personally, and I really like I'm rooting for them, and it's actually funny. It's actually, and also to go back to something Jesse was saying, like the dynamic between the three leads, Johan and Carolyn and the King, I think that their relationship is really interesting because there's this moment in the movie where we're sort of set up with a red herring almost, where the character Brant, who I really like also, he's the one who's executed alongside Johan at the end.
Cute, like curly hair, kind of cute guy.
The redhead, yeah. So he notices that Johan is paying a lot of attention and staring at the Queen, and says, well, have you ever heard this story where such and such started sleeping with such and such queen? The king found out and had them both killed. And so you think that this is what is going to happen, that or at least I thought that's what was going to happen the first time I watched it, when I thought that they would be together, and then the king would find out, and that he would go mad and have them both killed, like was predicted or whatever. But then that's actually sort of, in a way, could be read as what happens, but it's actually not what happens at all. And I think that twist to the plot that's sort of set up for us is sort of really smart. And
well, he also has that line where he says, don't make me like mourn you with like your severed head. And that's the irony, is that actually, Johan goes up and sees Brant's severed head. Yeah.
So, I just think that the writing in that way is really smart. And also, just a fun side note, there's a interview for this movie where Mads Mikkelsen is talking about how uncomfortable he was playing romantic opposite Alicia Vikander because of their age difference. Because I think at this point I guess they still have nearly
like 30 years.
I guess they still have the same age difference, but they have a pretty
20,
huge
30
age
years,
difference.
something like that.
Holy moly. 30, did you say 30 years?
20 or 30 years, because he's in his 50s now, and she's like maybe in her 30s, so pretty significant age difference.
So, 20s probably.
They can both get it, but still, yeah.
Yeah, they can both get it, but he's talking about how uncomfortable he was with this, and he sort of goes into a semi-rant about how he thinks that older women should be able to play sexual roles well into their years, ultimate feminist, Mads Mikkelsen, coming out of the woodwork. King.
In the movie's defense, her character is supposed to be like 16, so.
Yeah, and she
also did you say the king was her cousin?
First cousin, yeah.
Oh,
I mean, it's the olden days. Come on, let's allow a little bit of the judgment.
It's olden days. Come on.
If it was today, yeah. In the olden days, though, they married off at 16 to their first cousins, I guess. Gotta carry that royal Christian bloodline, I guess.
You did like
I mean, it's within the same like cycle of history that America's been around, so it's not super old.
I would just like to also say, I think that the ending, as we've talked about, is like super, super devastating. And if you told me before I watched it that like everyone you care about in this movie dies, I would not have been so keen on watching it. But you do get like the beacon of hope that Frederick, Carolyn's son, actually like reinstated everything that she and Johan did and then some, and like ended serfdom and like was a total badass. And so I think that like at least you sort of have that resolution at the end of the movie that's like, okay, at least everything was fine, like for Denmark.
It's pretty wild if it's all true that literally like their mom just wrote him a letter and these like young teenage kids were like, yeah, mom's got some good points. Let's totally restructure our entire government. Can we also talk about how Christian just like
she's got some good ones,
randomly ends up in like the Big Brothers Big Sisters program in the movie and gets him like a little like kid friend to just hang out with for the entire rest of the movie.
Also, that kid looks
It's just the
pissed.
most random plot.
He looks pissed the entire time.
You describe it like halfway through he signs up for a program and they're like, so here's your little brother.
Well, there's a scene where they kind of like show the little boy like working in the kitchen and you're like, oh, okay, cool. There's like a little kid there, whatever. And then like 30 minutes or an hour later in the movie, Johan comes in and he's like, oh, by the way, Christian, I have a friend for you. Here's your friend. And then like Christian just gets this boy and Christian's like, yeah, cool, okay. And then every scene after that, he's just holding the hand of this little
Here's
boy
your
and they're
brother.
like, all right, let's go play, I guess. And
He
Christian's
just
totally
he holds his hand.
It's so good. It's such a random plot line and I loved it. So Ash,
what did you all make of the I was gonna say, well, I know Jessica kind of poo-pooed it, but that's been her MO today. But what did you all make of like the kind of a lot of the political stuff in this movie? Because I think to me it was interesting because I don't think you would have a movie like an English language movie that would be kind of, or maybe I might be wrong, but I don't think you'd see an English language movie that would be kind of like promoting these ideas as like, thumbs up necessarily, especially with like the kind of fervent kind of radicalness that it has. It with a lot of to the point of like this is kind of like all the other stuffy period pieces, at least like those are just kind of playing by the books and to the point we made earlier, just kind of validating and asserting kind of what we already know. And I think that what is effective about this is it's dealing with ideas and concepts that are much more interesting and outside the realm of like what we're normally seeing in like period dramas, but also it's a story that we're unfamiliar with. So it almost feels like is this actually like there, like when I was Googling stuff, it was like, oh, like people are Googling, is this actually a true story? So I mean, what did you all make of kind of the the political nature of the movie.
I mean, like I said, I felt like it felt pretty relatable to kind of our own political atmosphere today, where there's a lot of people pushing for some pretty progressive policies, like, you know, real firm action on managing climate change and firmer protection of women's health and protection of, you know, queer quality of life. And then there's so much like I guess religious reasoning to try and fight these ideas, and so it can feel very frustrating because we just feel so stagnant. And so I guess I kind of saw a lot of our own predicament in the movie, where we've got some really great ideas and it's just so hard to move forward with just anything because we've got a room full of people who are like, no, that'll be too expensive, or no, and then there's just like so much power with such a small handful of people who just don't want to do anything with it, and it's very frustrating. What do the rest of you think?
Well, they want to like do stuff with it, but it's very within the lines of what
makes sense in their own like moral structure, but not really taking into consideration anybody else's. So yeah,
like I thought that it was good that they were like introducing progressive ideas, and obviously like you as the viewer are like rooting for Johann, even if he is like manipulating the king, like he's doing it for a good reason, like he's doing it to help the people. My issue is that we never get the perspective of the peasant that is like being helped by these things. And also I was like confused at the end about the like at the end, like, whenever he is, like, being executed and all of the people are there watching, and, like, also when the angry mob comes in, and, like, these are people that his policies, like, helped, and so why were they cheering it on, and why were they, like, rooting for it? And I guess, like, the answer to that sort of is, like, I guess the propaganda that was, like, stirred up against him about being like, get the German out of here and like stuff like that. But there was like this like kind of othering like nature of him, because they were like, he's not from here, so we need to get him out of here. But it was like, I don't know, it was kind of weird the way that those things were conflicting. Like, if these progressive ideas are for the people, then what is like their perspective on it, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely frustrating. Like, they're never going to be satisfied.
Well, I think you're on the money with it, though. I mean, that's like one, like, because they're not in, like, you know, it's not like it is today where they're sitting there like watching the council just, you know, decide stuff and are like kind of like keeping an eye on it. You know, they're very much reliant on, you know, the pamphlets and things of that nature to like pass the news along. And so the propaganda that they're being fed is saying that this guy's bad, even though the stuff he's doing is improving their quality of life and giving them financial stability and things like that. Because the way that they're getting information is so influenced by propaganda, they that's just how they think, because they're going, oh, well, this is what's happening, because this is how my information comes to me. And so yeah, they're like spitting at him and pushing him over and hating him at the very end, because I mean, they're not seeing the you know, how he's trying to help them. They're just seeing the depictions of him in the propaganda pamphlets and such.
Yeah, and that's if they can even read. Like, most of the people were like just like servants or whatever, and so yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Because you see the one scene where they're doing like the little puppet show. That seems silly, but it's like, I mean, that's narrative and story being instilled on people who are, you know, taking that in. Ash, were you going to say something?
That's their SNL.
No, I was just sort of agreeing with you. But yeah, I mean, sort of my take on the politics of it is, I guess, just like, sort of as I was saying earlier, like, I guess, like, I knew about this period. So I guess just from the get-go, obviously, like, I'm sympathetic with the Enlightenment figure, because I know that, you know, to be like, you know, history has shown that like the anti-feudalist is the good character. So you know, I was sympathetic with him from the beginning, and is sort of just sort of an interesting take to watch from that side of things, and to get a nice little leftist Mads.
I've never been super hot for philosophy, but it's cool to see this movie actually make philosophy kind of interesting. Like, my favorite part of philosophy class was my professor, who was pretty hot. So, this was cool to kind of see people be like, yeah, philosophy, man, expanding my mind. It's kind of a it's kind of
Sexy
a sapiosexual
philosophy.
movie, honestly, because they're like...
Well, no, the scene whenever they're like, it's like the montage scene where they're like getting all the laws passed. They're like, free the serfs, and they're like, no more censorship, and they're doing all the different things. You're just like, yeah.
And as Jesse was saying, like, a lot of these things, you know, are things that we're still dealing with in America. Like, we still deal with censorship, you know, stuff all the time. We still, you know, obviously not to the extent that they were, if they were banning, like, you know, whatever, Charles Dickens, whatever was being written.
Old stuff.
Whatever sort of...
No more Charles Dickens.
Oh, I guess it was the wrong time period, but whatever English books she was trying to bring over.
Let's
like,
censor Charles Dickens now.
Later, but
let's shut him down. We're gonna censor him now. No more Charles Dickens.
But the separation of church and state and stuff like that, like those are huge issues here.
Conversations now?
Why are we still having these conversations? And so it's interesting to see, like, that from a European standpoint, when now, like, you know, we know Europe to be such a secular state, and like, whereas, like, we're just totally Puritan in comparison.
It teaches you about how history works in cycles.
And you know what?
Yeah.
You can fight your whole life for progressive policies, and you may not see big effective change in your lifetime, but you plant the seed. You plant the seed,
may get to have
and
sex
then,
with Elisa Vikander.
Your children, maybe your children can do what you couldn't.
He planted some seeds in her too.
Speaking of, I was gonna say, speaking of planting the seed, as soon as they started banging,
you'd think
I was
he's
like,
a doctor. You'd think he would like have the scoop on kind of how to not.
But like back to Jesse's point, like, good for her, because you can tell she's having a shit time. And then, like, he shows up, and you're like, he's gonna take care of her, and he does, and you're like, oh, good for her.
Oh yeah, it's great. I'm a big fan. Love that for her.
I can tell.
She
Ash.
deserves
You seem
to
really
get
over the world about it.
She
So
deserves
wait,
it.
Ash, I have to ask, what if this is not the steamiest Mads movie? What is?
Oh God.
Is it the jack off scene in Pusher 2?
Oh God. We did last week, or no, it wasn't last week. 2 weeks ago for Pusher 2. We did talk about a scene that I wouldn't call it steamy, because it's like, it's not a horny scene, but you do, like, see everything. It's like Mads Mikkelsen is in there with a real life porn star and a real life prostitute, and they're like making out and touching each other, and he's like trying to, you know, like, he's trying to.
Okay.
When are we gonna do Tilda Swinton so that we don't have to
Swinton.
talk about sexy stuff?
Wait, no,
Okay,
you still haven't answered the question, though. You still have not answered the question.
Okay, so there is a really long and steamy sex scene in a movie called Polar.
The what?
Polar. It's a terrible movie. But Polar, it came out like a few years ago.
Which Mads movie balances very sexy and also good movie?
Sexy and good movie. Let me look at my letterbox list called. Okay.
We'll get back to it. We're gonna wrap up the episode. But first, before we go into the wrap up, I do want to bring up this wholly anonymous Mads Mikkelsen confession. Wholly anonymous. Nobody on this call is in any way associated with it. But here we go. I want Mads to headbutt me once normal and once just with his cheekbone.
True.
Ash, what does that mean?
It means exactly what it sounds like.
If only we could talk to the author of that confession.
Ooh. Here's the one, Jessy. It's called Coco Chanel and Igor Stravinsky.
Uh-huh.
Mads Mikkelsen plays Igor Stravinsky. And he and Coco Chanel have an affair.
Sounds good. Kind of wondering why that's not in this series.
Well, I have a letterbox list called Mass Booty, and it's all the movies where you see his butt.
Love that. Love that for you.
All right. Well, that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/cinematary, where we post all the movies that we talked about in this episode. Head over to Patreon at patreon.com/cinematary, and thank you to our patrons: Cam, Chad Newsom, Christina Daughtry, Harry Eskin, Maggie, Ron Hayes, Kittiest of Kittens, Titus Arthur, Tyler Chandler, and Whitney Rio Ross. Thank you so much for your patronage. We will be wrapping up, sadly, our Mads Mikkelsen series next week with 2015's Men in Chicken.
Yes.
Which seems like we're gonna get a.
There's a lot of good fan art from Men in Chicken.
Fan art. Is he hot in Man? Is he hot?
Yeah, a lot of
in it.
I'll have to explain next week.
Can't wait.
Okay. Until then, we'll see you next week.